We are back with episode 7 of Josh and Reid Are Parents. The guys recap their conversation with Melanie Grogan and consider what it means to communicate well with kids. It's a tight 20-minute episode. They might be hitting their stride.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 7 of Josh and Reid Are Parents. I'm Reid.
I'm Josh.
And we're parents.
We're parents.
We're so glad you are listening and you are joining us here for another conversation about what it's like to be parents and the pitfalls and the joys and everything in between of what it's like for us to be parents. We've had an exciting last week. We got to have our first guest on. Melanie Grogan joined us. If you didn't watch episode 6, highly recommend going back and watching it. She was a fantastic guest, just offered so much wisdom and authenticity and just even like creativity in the way they seem to parent, like where it's like pretty open to what needs to happen. So I've been struck all week by having Melanie on.
I know, man. We always look at the views and how many people have viewed our different things on YouTube and stuff like that. And I'm afraid that I'm half of the views right now on YouTube. It was just such a fun conversation. It was just such a fun thing to have on for a couple of reasons. Number one, the reason we brought Melanie on is because she's just great. Like, she's a great person. She's a great conversationalist, a tremendous communicator. And so she's a lot of fun to talk to and to be around. But then also just the fact that we figured out how to have a guest on a podcast, that's a whole thing.
Big time. Right?
I know, man. We're pretty big time.
And somehow it didn't fall apart or crumble. That was exciting.
I would actually ask her questions and he responded to it. It was wild.
Crazy.
It was crazy. And we were in 3 different states at the time too. So come on, guys, be impressed with that.
Yeah.
Be impressed with that. Reid, I was wondering, as you kind of walk through some of those different listens or whatever, as you were hearing what Melanie said, some of the things that struck me that she said, what we're going to try to do is see if we can extrapolate a little bit from that conversation and see if we can push it forward to this conversation and maybe other episodes as we move. One of the things I was really struck by is this idea of like you said, an openness and a willingness to let kids be kids, to let people, her kids, be people.
Yeah.
And really let them, she talked about letting them fail, letting them be who they want, letting them make choices, and really trying to be intentional about letting them, trying to put herself in their shoes, even in hard, kind of difficult moments. That sounded awesome. It also sounded really hard.
Yeah. So scary to when she told the story about when their first child was going out driving and she saw on that she got lost. I was imagining myself I would have called. I would have been you turn, you're going the wrong way. You're lost. You need to go back 2 streets over and turn left and then you'll be there. I immediately was oh yeah, I definitely would have made that call. I would have overstepped there and not allowed my child to figure out how to use their critical thinking. And so that was one of the things that's kind of stuck with me is how she was talking about we've raised you to be critical thinkers who are capable of getting out of tough situations and can apply yourself to the world in a way that's meaningful. And so I'm going to trust you to do that. And I part of me is yeah, that sounds amazing to be able to do that. And then part of me is well, how am I going to do that? I just still, because I'll always hear parents but I still see you as a little child. And it's right. And I know I'm going to do that to my kid. And so I've been struck by that all week of oh man, how am I going to open up my hand and trust that my child's going to walk this out.
Man, I feel that's so strongly because I think it is at least every good parent's natural instinct to protect. That's the first most basic level is protection, which is a beautiful expression of love towards your child. Right? This is mine and I will make sure that this person is provided for and is protected from the bad world and that we know is out there and all that kind of stuff. And then this idea that we have to intentionally release, not just let them do it. It's our job to let them go. It's is a brutal thing. She used the term, like you said, trust a lot. Trusting our kids, I think there's also, like, she talked about this idea of trusting God, like the protector, willing to say, like, I can't control their lives, and so pretending to, or like trying, like efforting to, is not really, like, it's kind of counterproductive. And so how do I lead them and grow them and then trust them to see if they can do it? Oh man, that's super hard stuff,
Yeah. It's like brutally challenging. And also like the greatest task that a parent can have.
Right.
And I'm thinking through, like, one of the biggest things for me as a person when I do build trust with somebody is communication. Right. And being able to have open lines of communication. And we've said before in previous episodes, for those that have listened, if you're new, you'll be like, duh, of course. But like, if your teenager is talking to you at all, you're doing a good job, even if they're like yelling at you. That means that they actually talk. They're actually communicating. And so like that, even if you don't like the form of communication at all is actually a big deal. And so like I think I'm kind of struck with that idea of like open communication. What are some ways that parents can navigate when it does, if a teenager is going like, banana sandwich for a week? Like, how do you go about like navigating those times and still be able to keep an open line of communication?
Right. A banana sandwich for a week sounds like a grace. Sounds like a peace. Like, instead of it being like 6 years.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Just imagine ebb and flow.
Yeah, the up and down. Right. Yeah. I think that's such a good way. I think the way that Melanie kind of talked about it is this idea of like an intentional openness, right? Mm-hmm. Like this way, like, I really do want you to come talk to me. And I think this is a real struggle for a lot of people. Number one of the reasons it's so hard is because there's like developmental stages of what that means. Like, it's not the same when they're 5 and 10 and 15, right?
Yeah. That's
just hard adjustments. Those are on the fly things we're learning, right? That it worked 6 weeks ago and this doesn't work anymore, right? Why?
Yeah.
But I do think there's some general fundamentals at all ages that I think a lot of parents need help with, at least thinking around it. I know I do. And I know that some of the people that come into my therapy room really struggle with. And it's this idea of sometimes they really just need information from their kids, right? Sometimes they need to understand. And also sometimes there's a frustration that I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what's going on with them. And I don't know why they won't let me in. And so there's almost like one of two things happens. Either there's like a constant nagging, like a constant, like, let me in. Or there's this like, hey, well, you know that you're supposed to come talk to me. I'm waiting over here. And I kind of think there's a thing in the middle here where I want us to kind of like imagine this idea of opening up a pathway for them, right? Like this idea of being able to say like, hey, this is the direction that you can walk to be able to get to me, right? I want you to know that this is how I would, and I'm even going to like model it for you. Hey, I'm coming to you with this in this particular way. This time I'm communicating to you. If you wanted to walk this path back towards me, I'd be very open in that. Yeah. And there's patience and there's grace and there's gentleness inside of that. That's really hard to cultivate. I don't think that's something that would happen like magically inside of that moment. But I don't know, man. Like I've seen a lot of people really struggle with that idea of how to create space in that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I've been thinking about it from when I was coaching basketball for all those years, and you'd notice a player was off, or just like you could just tell like he or she was struggling for whatever reason, whether it was school was getting too heavy or something was happening in the team they didn't like or whatever it was. And early in my coaching days, I would be like, "Oh, they'll be fine. Like they'll figure it out."
Or they need to get over it.
I would just let it ride like for a little while and be like, "Yeah, it'll be fine." And what I learned over time, and from one of our mentors, was like, "Why don't you just bring them in and talk to them? Like get out in front of it and have a conversation of like, hey, how you feeling? Like I'm not bringing you in here to like, I'm not mad at you. I just noticed that you're like your body, like you don't look very happy. You look pretty frustrated, or is something going on? Is school okay? Are you okay?" And just be able to check in, and so that they know like, oh, like that person's actually paying attention to what's going on in my life and is aware that it might not just be basketball, because basketball is just a game. Like I wonder if something else is happening that we might be able to support you in and be present for with you as you navigate your teenage years.
Which is like, I think I'm fascinated by the perception of that kid in that moment, right? Because usually when a kid is brought into an office or to have a conversation, maybe even a serious conversation with an adult, an intentional conversation with an adult, usually teens, and we all remember this. I remember this very directly when I was like 15 years old. If an adult hey, I need to talk to you, alarm bells.
Yes.
Like, what have I done wrong? Right? Like, what do I need to like focus up on and make sure I'm set? Right? Like, what do I need to make sure I like? What do I need to like? I'm full defense mode as I walk into that room. Right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of kids are in that. And I think having them here, like, oh wait, there's space for me in here. Like, you want me inside of this? Not just me holding space for you, but you actually want to have space for me to be in here. I think that's a whole different way of going. However, Reid, I wonder the initial conversations inside of those rooms. But we worked with Ryan Roller, who did this really, really effectively, both of us at different times. What was often the initial response of kiddos when that happened right off the bat?
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm fine. Do you need anything? No. Okay.
Exactly. And I think so many parents experience that exact thing. I think they experience it.
Yes.
I think they experience it a lot at all different ages, but like from 12 to 18, like crazy.
Yeah.
Right. Which is like what they're saying. Like, I could create all the space in the world I want. And they're just going to say like, Mom, fine. I'm okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about it. Like when I remember being a teenager and my dad would be like, everything okay in school? I'd be like, yeah, I'm fine. And then at the end of the next 9 weeks would come and he'd be like, you said you were fine, but like your report card is saying otherwise. Like he'd be like, I'm not even mad at you. Like, I just want you to know, like, I want you to be a person that does their best. And I know that a C in math is not your best. A C, like, sure. I know that you're like way more capable than that and you're just not doing it. So like, let's talk about what needs to happen here, because I'm confused because I checked in. I was asking like, hey, are you okay in school? And you'd be like, yeah, I'm fine. And so like, I wonder, how do we navigate, like you were saying, to like checking in, keeping there was a line of communication. He did ask without it becoming like you're saying, where it's like badgering of like, are you doing it? 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 Like,
Yeah, this is such a good question. I think there's two skills here that I would want parents to have. And the first one is what we've talked about many times, but I think it's just really, really vital. And I think it's specific here in communication. Like, can I calm my fear and not have that presented as I talk? So like literally as I speak to them, how can my voice sound calm and can be like intentional in that? Right. So can I do that? Yeah. Right. And I think often what we want is our kids to just hear what we're saying and how we're saying it instead of like how they're perceiving it. Does that make sense? Yeah. And I think there has to be a lot of intentionality about tone and how my facial expressions and when we're doing it and how we're feeling. And if we're trying to do this 5 minutes before we get in the car for school, right? Is that the moment? You see what I'm saying? So just an awareness of tone and timing and all of that is big. And then the second skill, which I think is something that a lot of parents maybe don't, it doesn't come obvious or natural to them, is this idea of noticing things, right? And then communicating that noticing. So Ryan would do this well, and they would come into the room and they would say, like, hey, I'm noticing this and this and this about you. I noticed like some pretty bad body language, and noticed you're struggling a little bit. I noticed you were kind of upset during the third quarter last night, whatever the situation is. And so the idea is not to say like, account for these things. I demand to know what's going on here. Instead, it's just like, hey, this is what I'm picking up, right?
Am I right?
Hey, right. Yeah, fill in those gaps. Hey man, I'm hearing you have an AP class, and I haven't seen your AP book in 6 weeks. I'm just noticing. Like, I just wonder, you good? You good there? Yeah. Hey, I've noticed that over the last 3 Fridays, you've come in and you've had lower and lower energy. I just wonder what's up there, man. Everything okay? Yeah. The idea in that moment is that kid is going to say, Mom, I'm fine. Dad, I don't know where. That's what's going to happen. But the message they receive is, oh, they're watching. They're aware. They see that. That's interesting. Yeah. And that opens space and opens a pathway towards them. And I think those are hard things, but I think those are helpful skills.
Yeah. So if the conversation had been like, instead of it just being like, are you okay at school? If maybe it had been like, hey, I heard you say you're okay last Friday, but I haven't seen you open your math book since then. Are you doing? Is the work being done elsewhere? And can I help in any way? Yeah. Like, is that a better, not to like, yeah. It's like, is that a way that maybe could scaffold a conversation?
Yeah. And like, I really honestly, I believe so strongly in humor. I believe so strongly in it. right? Like, so I was saying this before we
set off
recorded
the front. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Just to help the edge off a bit. So one of the reasons I love Reid, there's a lot of reasons why Reid is amazing. He's one of my really good friends, but one of the things I really appreciate him is he's a tremendous communicator. I've seen him in various places where he communicates really, really well, especially to kids. I've watched him communicate especially well to kids. This is why, they were talking about that last time with Melanie's daughter and saying like, man, she loved you. She was so thankful for you. It's because you're a great communicator. And one of the things that you do incredibly well inside of that communication is use humor, right? And that's not the only thing we use. We use a lot of different angles, a lot of different ways of coming about it. But like the idea, Reid, of like, instead of being like, hey, I haven't seen your book in a while. Are you doing your homework? Versus like, you know what I miss seeing around here? I would love to see a math book around here. I miss it. Can you bring it to me? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not the end of the world. Right? Like,
no, right.
Like a senior report card isn't the end of the world. It won't stop you from being successful one day. But I do want to help you like learn rhythms of consistency and being persistent when it is hard. If it is hard, like how can I walk you through that? And so, I've spent just in the last couple of weeks. We said before, my son is 6. He just turned 6, and so I've been wrestling with like bedtime and because he's at the age where like he totally can be fine by himself in his room. Like
sure.
He totally can. He sleeps fine. And then there's also been like random moments where he'll be like, hey, can you sleep with me tonight? I'm like, no, I don't fit in this bed. I'm a gigantic human. I'm 6'3". Like I don't fit in this twin size bed. But I will lay with you for a few minutes or I will sing you extra songs or whatever. And so we'll talk about it. But just in the last couple of weeks, I've noticed, I noticed within myself that even when I was doing that, I was still in my brain somewhere else. I was emotionally and mentally removing myself from the room, thinking about all the things I needed to go do. And it just hit me like I'm not actually here with him right now. And I started wondering, I wonder if he's sensing that in some way. Yeah. And so just in the last 5-6 days, I've been this phrase, there is time, has been sitting in my brain over and over and over again. Like I don't need to get out there and do the dishes yet. I can do them in 10 minutes. 10 more minutes is not going to be the difference in doing the dishes or not, or vacuuming or whatever the other things, or making beds or whatever, like not making beds at bedtime, whatever it is. The other things I need to do. And so I've just been in my own head having this phrase of like, there is time, and sitting with that as we do bedtime. And I'm not saying it's like a magic trick or something, but like I've noticed, maybe it's just that I feel different. Maybe it's because I'm actually present that I feel different. Yeah. But I've noticed that with him, I think he's felt more calm in those times too, because he's aware, even if he can't verbalize it. I think humans are remarkable at knowing what somebody else is feeling and experiencing, whether or not, especially what they're feeling about us. Yeah. And so I've been struck by that just in the last few days. And so that phrase, "there is time," has been sitting in my heart and on my mind a lot.
Yeah, "there is time" is really good. I am astounded by how well kids can perceive what is happening around them. Yeah, without hard data, like they can just be aware of like what's going on. In a lot of ways, it feels like, I'm sure it's like a survival thing, right? Yeah. Like them knowing like what's dangerous and what's not, like how to feel like okay in a room, and like am I all right in these scenarios? Like they're just very, very aware of what's happening. And so this idea of like him perceiving that I am not present in this room, at least mentally or emotionally, is like absolutely right. Yeah. And you and I can know that too. Like when our spouses or when like a coworker or whatever, when they're not wanting to be in that room, 100% I feel that 100%. Yes. And so, I really like that idea of being aware that our kids feel that too, maybe even more so than we do at times as adults. I love too, this idea of really being intentional about communicating with your kids without urgency. There are certainly moments where urgency is necessary, right? This is a huge deal. This is going to keep you safe. This is a big thing. Time is of the essence. But often, like if you're trying to figure out like, why won't they talk to me? How can I can't get to them? I wonder if there's ways of slowness in that and of presence, right? That like there's ways to cultivate like, hey, I'm not worried about when this happens. I just want this conversation to occur. It's wide open, man. So head back my way whenever you can. And that I think leads to better opening up around like urgent conversation. Need you here with me. Yeah. Right. I think sometimes we try to go the other way and it doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
So we should talk a lot more about that. We should make an entire episode or 7 about.
Feel like episode 8 might be circling around that conversation for sure.
Let's do that.
Let's do that for sure. Guys, if you have questions, thoughts, comments, suggestions, guests that you want us to have on, reach out to us, drop it in the comments, like, subscribe, follow. We really use Instagram the most. YouTube, we use YouTube a good bit, but mainly just because that's where we host the videos. So we're pretty active on Instagram, though, with like actual communication stuff.
I want to be clear, like we don't get any money from anything at all happening. It just makes us feel cool when you watch it. That's it. That's seriously the only thing we get.
There's nothing. At this point, this is truly a passion project.
That's all we got.
It's 100%. All right.
All right. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.